When we raise our voice to sing solidarity, we got to fight to give that meaning. You know, the song says solidarity forever. It don't say solidarity for 8 hours. It don't say solidarity to the midnight hour in case you're working the second shift. That song says solidarity forever. And every time we raise it and fight for it, we got to fight to give that meaning.
When the Jim Crow South pushed African Americans to move north, Detroit saw an influx of workers looking for jobs in the auto industry, creating the United Auto Workers in 1935, known as the UAW. By the 1950s, Detroit reached its prime, becoming the 5th largest city in the United States. With the growing auto industry, the labor and civil rights movement became more mainstream, with the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement, forming an uprising that would not only shape Detroit's future workforce, but become a staple of solidarity for African Americans across the nation. The UAW in the 1950s was led by civil rights activist Walter P. Reuther, and its primary goal was to protect auto workers from labor inequality and defend their rights. However, Martin Glaberman, a Detroit historian, American Marxist, and auto worker, pointed out that although African Americans made up 70% of the Hamtramck assembly plant, known at the time as the Dodge Main Assembly Plant, the plant management and lower supervision, and the Hamtramck city administration is essentially Polish. Walter P. Reuther and many of the other UAW leaders advocated for equality, and despite being civil rights activists, often didn't elect African Americans to be in the leading roles despite making up 70% of the one assembly plant, leaving out the other 24 assembly plants under the UAW in Detroit. There was also a growing voice from the African American workers at the plant that argued the UAW was racist in numerous ways. One argument was that although the auto industry could pay them more, Black workers were kept in low-earning, dangerous jobs, and the UAW would ignore this inequality in the workplace. Although various wildcat strikes, which are strikes taken by unionized workers without the union's authority, took place between 1967 and 1968 to address these inequalities, on May 2nd of 1968, possibly the largest wildcat strike took place at the Dodge Main Assembly Plant in protest of the sped-up assembly lines. The strike consisted of various races and genders, acquiring around 4,000 workers. As punishment for this strike, 5 were discharged, 10 were given 30 days off, and many others received 5 days, 3 days, 1 day, and warnings. In the end, 9 workers were fired, 7 of which were Black. One notable worker who was fired was General Gordon Baker Jr., who was the accused leader of the strike. Although it's unclear why, it was rather working Polish women who led the strike by walking out, and the factory workers that followed stated that the sped-up assembly lines were their breaking point to then follow suit. In response to his dismissal, Baker wrote a letter to the corporation showing his disagreement with his discharge. When trying to find work in the auto industry again, Baker was unable to until applying under an alias. After his dismissal, Baker later connected with John Watson, who created the newspaper Inner City Voice after seeing this disproportionate punishment against Black workers. These men, along with 7 others, would become the founding members of the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement, also known as DRUM. DRUM was founded to provide African Americans a platform within their local UAW and originally was made to work alongside the UAW, but would later shape to become a revolutionary party, leaning heavily into the Marxism-Leninism ideology. Inner City Voice was a newspaper founded in September of 1967 by John Watson, giving itself the title of Detroit's Black Community Newspaper. The newspaper covered many topics of inequality across Detroit, and from May 1968 and onward would be used to promote action for DRUM within the Black community. In July of that same year, DRUM organized another strike at the Dodge Main Plant, this time mainly focusing on African American inequality and labor rights within the auto industry. Over 4,000 African Americans on strike caused the plant to close for 2 days, which prevented the production of almost 3,000 vehicles. To express their need for change, DRUM would also publish their first list of demands for the UAW and management of the Dodge Main Plant, titling it List of Workplace Demands, which would be handed out to workers at the plant. While many workers, white and Black alike, supported the DRUM movement, there were negative responses to the movement as well. James Geschenwinder, a Detroit novelist and civil rights activist, in his book, Class, Race, and Worker Urgency, The League of Revolutionary Black Workers, explains, drum attacks on whites often had an ethnic cast because of the presence of many Polish immigrants and workers of Polish ancestry at the Dodge main plant. Drum also regularly referred to the Hamtramck police as Polish pigs. There was also concerns of overall black radicalism in Detroit following the 1967 Detroit Rebellion and uprising of the Black Panther Society, and claims that women in drum were not fairly represented despite contributing to newspaper articles and official documents. In an organization where all African American workers were supposed to be represented, women were still marginalized. Throughout 1969, drum would hold many other wildcat strikes not only within the Dodge main plant, but, as the first of the Revolutionary Union movements, would gather activists to form groups such as Eldon Avenue Revolutionary Union Movement, Jefferson Avenue Revolutionary Union Movement, Ford Revolutionary Union Movement, and more. Then, in February of 1970, Inner City Voice published their paper titled Election Special, focusing on the upcoming election for union officials at the Dodge main plant, UAW Local 3. Kenneth Cockrell, a member of Drum, voiced action for the community to support this election and stated, "In past elections, the voting machines were handled in a fashion clearly in violation of the Union Constitution and the National Labor Relations Act." Professor Goldberg at Wayne State University, who was a friend of General Gordon Baker and often brought him into lectures to teach his students, explains,
kind of what they started in the plants, it will ultimately lead to a whole bunch of changes regarding racial discrimination, both within unions and the UAW in particular, as well as in Chrysler itself and other plants. So a lot of what they initiated was, in opposition to racism and upgrading or promotions or, being in, more comfortable processes on the line or in skilled work. After the threat that they posed to the industry, Black people started getting upgraded to those positions. But on the labor front, reforms were instituted about some of the issues that they're most adamant about, workplace safety, things of that nature.
Walter P. Reuther and his partners, consisting of Hamtramck police, factory management, and city officials, given the name the Reuther Gang by Drum, were accused of implementing the Hamtramck City Police to prevent black workers from voting on the union election. During the Local 3 election where Drum members gathered to vote, 2 of the 3 machines that workers could vote at were broken. The Local 600 election was purposely scheduled on a Saturday, so workers wouldn't be at work in order to vote since the plant was closed. It was evident that the UAW's goal was to stop black workers from voting and electing Drum members to be on the union board. As a response to this election, the Drum voice became louder. After the election, Drum would then switch to set another set of demands from the UAW, demanding they assign a public accountant not affiliated with the UAW to tally votes in the future and run the election. While many of the other demands focused on the auto industry, some had spread to the national level, demanding the UAW use its national power to encourage withdrawal from Vietnam. Inner City Voice wouldn't receive funding to be printed, and thus would later be discontinued as a result of harsh backlash due to the strong communist nature of the paper and that the public believed it promoted violence. By 1970, Drum merged into the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, which became focused on change within all parts of America for African American workers. However, the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, also known as LRBW, would split soon after in 1971 due to conflicting ideas. These ideas ranged from creating more run movements, later being involved in the Postal Service and health workers, or becoming more involved with students in the area. Kenneth Cockrell would go on to help produce The South End, a newspaper formed by students at Wayne State University, which still lives to this day. Drum's legacy would also continue on despite the disbandment, allowing African American workers in Detroit an opportunity to have a voice in their local union and further the representation of black workers in the UAW. Solidarity Forever, the anthem of the UAW, became a voice for the black auto workers to make their voice heard, holding on to that meaning of the song. Drum became the embodiment of the anthem, not only as a representative party formed by political ideas, but individuals working to find victory and solidarity in the fight.